Welcome to your sophomore year at the Tragedy Academy, where you are the teacher and we are the students. Together, we will learn from past tragedy to lay the foundation for a better humanity. The only supplies you'll need: an open mind and a sense of humor. So, tilt that chair back, talk out of turn, and never raise your hand. Because this is the Tragedy Academy and class is in session. And I'm Purist Scott. Preparing, and I was looking through all the things that are surrounding our discussion today. I was like, if somebody walked in behind me, they would hope that I'm at least a doctor or something like that. Welcome to the Tragedy Academy, a show created to bridge societal divides in a judgment-free zone using candor and humor. My name is Jay, and today I am joined by Rachel Macdonald. How you doing today, Rachel?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for coming on today to share your story. For all the women out there, this show should probably resonate with you. I think in one way, shape, or form, there's going to be congruencies to Rachel's conditions and things that she's endured over the last, 10 years? Somewhere
Feels
around that
like
time
it.
frame? Yeah. So, Rachel, do you want to tell us about endometriosis, which is what you're here to discuss, and then everything that went into that whole entire journey, and just kind of walk us through that?
Yeah. So I guess the definition of endometriosis, just kind of like an idea of what it is. It really is just like uterine tissue that grows in the wrong place. But to me, because obviously, like, I'm not like, oh, my uterine tissue is in the wrong place. Like, that wasn't my symptom. What it was to me was just pain all the time. The way, I mean, obviously any woman listening knows how periods work, but just in case you don't know, like usually once a month for a week, you can get cramping, and it can be painful, but it's not supposed to be as painful as I think people are led to believe, which is why I think a lot of women don't get listened to with things like endometriosis.
So you think that the pain is downplayed tremendously? Do you find that that's more from a female perspective or a male perspective, or is that societal?
I think it's societal, because I've had male doctors not take it seriously, but I've had women doctors also not take it seriously. I think it's just that people are used to like menstruation being uncomfortable and painful, that I think people forget there's kind of like a range on that. If the pain goes outside of this range, it stops becoming normal.
Yeah. Don't we have that meter when you walk into any office that starts with like super frowny face to like finger guns happy guy or whatever? So I would think that if you're outside of that realm, then yes, that's an emergency. That's something that you need to take care of. That's outside of the norm.
Yeah. So you'd think it'd be that simple, but I think a lot of doctors kind of think that either people are being over dramatic about it, or, I mean, and there's also just there's not as much attention paid to it with like research and stuff, I think. And that's one of the really big issues, because I mean, we kind of look at like medicine right now as being really advanced. But if you compare it to like with endometriosis, the medication that I took for it, which didn't work for me, was the only medication available. And it was not even fully approved. So I took it while it was still experimental.
That was the Olarissa that you had referenced in your video. Yeah, I was reading up on steps that you had taken through this process from beginning to end, and starting out with that endometriosis. And I want to make sure that we don't make this all clinical, because what I'd love to hear is when a young woman is going through, first of all, the throes of growing up, puberty, on top of, the menstrual cycle, and then everything that society has created as the role of a young woman, and what she is to be whole is to be able to be this person to somebody else, be this for whatever situation. And I want to make sure that we address what it's like to go through that, and the stressors, the PTSD that comes from chronic pain, that comes from, interacting with your loved ones, feeling the inability to provide certain levels of things, and inadequacies and things that, I'll be honest, I firmly believe they're all figments of society. that are created as invisible barriers in our head, and we just simply fight against them. So I want to make sure that we discuss these things, because everybody can Google how to get an IUD. Everybody can Google endometriosis, but not everybody can feel your pain and then also understand how you went through it. So I'd love to be able to delve into that quite a bit, because I think that that's where the bread and butter is. It's what gets people through things.
My experience, I mean, every aspect of life was affected by it. But I think I'll start with like school and then work. So with school, it became really difficult because at the time in high school, it wasn't as bad as it got in college, but I was still facing a lot of, I have to go to school every day. This is high school, but I didn't feel like something I could share at high school. I mean, I had a lot of progressive friends, but it wasn't like as easy to be like, hey, like I'm having extreme pain and I don't feel like I can be a normal functioning person today. That wasn't really, and it wasn't my parents that were like, you have to go to school. It was just like the way the system's set up,
Well, there's also a child in those situations has one of their greatest fears is of missing out.
Yeah.
People fail to remember that when a child is wrapped up in that life, their reality is it's fast moving. It's being there to take it all in. And when you aren't there, you get deathly afraid that you're going to get dropped out of the loop. You are no longer going to be relevant. So you want to make sure that you're there every day. And, on top of the fact that you have to keep up your grades, you have to keep up, the entire charade in order to function. So you feel like you're failing yourself in advance.
Yeah. And it's difficult to focus. It's difficult to, and it affects your mood. Anything usually that causes discomfort, like you get irritable and it starts to become really difficult to kind of control your emotions. Because obviously mood swings is a thing already. And then if you add like mood swings on top of like a menstrual cycle that is so painful that, there's the vomiting, there's loss of consciousness, all things that shouldn't be normal. And to be always told like it's supposed to suck. Getting your period is already scary. And then in your first 5 or 6 years of it, thinking, oh my gosh, I have 50 years ahead of me of being so miserable constantly.
I could not imagine that thought. Hey, guess what? You get a dose of 1 week of pain for the next 50 years or whatever. Oh.
Yeah, and endometriosis takes like an average of, I think, 8 to 10 years to get diagnosed. So people think that this is their normal. They think this is just the way it's going to be and that there's nothing they can do about it. And not everyone's given the knowledge or the information from their doctors that it's not normal.
Well, here's a thought behind that. There's no way to know. When your only reference point is an internal mechanism for your own pain or whatever it is that you're enduring daily, the only reference point you will ever have for somebody standing next to you is either the look on their face or the feeling that you have that's closely associated with it. I would look at it from the perspective of, say, someone that was not necessarily shaming you, but not giving you the credence for your situation, not allowing your full voice to be heard for your pain or something like that. And let's say it's like a female doctor or something like that. In those situations, I find it hard not to think that maybe the societal experiences, generational experiences become that women had been kept to such a demure status that they had to hold their pain in so as not to affect the family household or to be perceived as anything but just a silent wife. And then now we're looking at people get jealous of what they can't have, or people get jealous of what they didn't get to do, especially in age. So what do? If you heard, shut up, be quiet about it, don't say anything, and then you finally get somebody in front of you in a more progressive state, you might resent the fact that they get to be free. You don't know that you resent it, but you resent it because you didn't get the chance to have your voice heard. It's an odd dynamic. We had an author, Karen Lavin, on not long back. She's a hysterical woman. She's just amazing. And she wrote a book. I want to say it was somewhere around your age. And she had similar issues, not necessarily to your degree, but enough to cause her, unreal amounts of pain and trauma during that period of her life. And what she did was she wrote a book, and I have it on my shelf over here, and it's The Other 28 Days, right? And it was just something stupid about, like, not stupid. It's a funny book. It's a great creative piece. And it's just dumb things that you can do with female products for the other 28 days until you have to go back to using feminine hygiene products again. Right. So it was her way of breaking a barrier down amongst her generation, which would be the generation before you, trying to make it acceptable to have an open dialogue about what women are going through. And actually not necessarily for me to hear it or another man to hear it. Well, they need to understand, but normalizing it within the female population, allowing the breath, of everybody to drop the anxiety around people knowing, so it's got to be so odd to walk around and feel like you're being looked at because of something that nobody could ever see.
Yeah. And a lot of people have a hard time bringing up issues about something that they're supposed to feel ashamed about in the first place. So it's for me, obviously my parents didn't ever, they weren't ever weird about it, but a lot of people were weird about it. Even when I was having pain issues or whatever, and I had no choice but to explain to a boss or a coworker or a teacher or whatever what was going on. They would get uncomfortable all of a sudden, and then it stopped being me trying to say hey, this is causing me to be unable to perform my job or my class properly. And I'm just experiencing pain. I need to step outside or whatever. And they would get really weird about it and get uncomfortable, which just kind of sucks.
Humans really fucked up the understanding of how, we should deal with empathetic situations or painful situations, and why we ever decided to tattoo shame on something that comes once a month that we know is going to happen to every female that comes out, barring some kind of issue with, the internal organs of some sort. But aside from that, we know it's going to happen. It's like getting angry at the sun for coming up or being shameful, or you know it's going to happen. Why wouldn't we take that time to normalize it? Which is one of the reasons why I kind of like TikTok for things like this, right? Because it opens up a humorous dialogue. It allows people to empathize with each other, to relate, to bridge those divides and go, you know what? This is funny. Because, we're all in it together. And if we're all in it together, we can talk about it. I could deal with a little less farting from you guys. That's kind of scary on TikTok. I've seen that's a trend amongst women on TikTok now. They all want to do something extremely obscene, and it's hysterical.
There's some wild people on there.
It's insane. But I like that for that reason. It feels like it's a megaphone for, the ability to bridge those divides. Going through these phases, these steps that you went through, because you had endometriosis, and then you were put on these extremely potent hormone drugs.
The Orlissa, yeah.
Orlissa. And then you underwent almost like your own clinical trial while you were doing this as well, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So, it took me 6 months to get the medication approved in the first place, even though it was the only medication available. The insurance still didn't want to cover it. We finally got it covered, and it didn't have a huge amount of research. It had passed its trials enough to be able to be given to the general public. But I don't know, whatever that last stage is that essentially gives insurance the clearance to cover it. They hadn't gotten that far yet. So it was considered experimental. And most insurances don't cover experimental drugs because there's not enough research yet. So when I started it, I started taking the smaller dose that was once a day. And I was having really, really, really bad side effects, like getting extreme chest pains and really bad mood swings. And it wasn't even actually helping at all. So after being on, and that was supposed to be for 2 years, after being on it for 1.5 years, they then switched me to the 6-month course for the last 6 months. But the 6-month course they switched me to was never supposed to be given after the 2-month course in the first place. It was supposed to be either 2 years at a small dose.
So you went subsequent. You did a 1.5 years on that 2-year course at a lower dose. And then rather than giving you a break in between, you ramped right into a 6-month course of the same amount of drug in a shorter amount of time.
So it was double the dose.
That's not good.
I was taking 150 once a day, and then they switched it to 200 twice a day for 6 months. And so we weren't really sure what that would do, if it would help or, how that would change the side effects, because no one had really done it before. So it was kind of like a let's just see how it goes situation. But it ended up causing such like intense depressive symptoms that I had to be taken off of it 3 months, and I couldn't even complete the course because it caused so much issues. And I ended up having to go to a psychiatrist.
I would only imagine so, because those chemicals in the body are tended to stay at certain levels and in balance with each other for reasons, throughout development, that type of thing, because essentially there's nothing wrong with you as, your internal organs, all of that's ready to rock and roll, but you have this tissue that's growing everywhere, which, by the way, can grow in your bowels. It can grow around your stomach pieces. It can get all throughout there.
It can spread really far.
I'm sure your doctor is telling you all these things at the same time. What puts you, on your knees, as if you hadn't been on them the entire time, but you get 3 months into this, you're now we're psychiatrists in, which, by the way, probably could have used that back, like 6 years ago for the situation as a whole.
Yeah.
Nobody gives that any thought.
Yeah.
They don't understand that chronic pain is probably one of the worst things. I have chronic pain from several injuries, and I can tell you that it does take a psychological toll on you. It will rip out your entire reality, because you're not able to take things in without it coming through a filter of pain. Right. So you don't even get to take things at face value, because if we were looking at Benjamin Franklin's bifocals and flipping lenses, that lens that comes down that is pain it's not just red. It's like fucking dark blood red. And you're only seeing or hearing that infinitesimal amount that gets back there. And instead of being able to react and say, hey, I'm not good for this conversation right now, whatever it might be, we react with frustration, anger at the situation, because what? We're not upset that we can't hear them or feel them for who they are right then. We're actually upset because we're disappointing them in how they look at us. Nobody realizes that. We think that our anger and our upsetness in that moment, it is because we can't play the role. We're not in the game. We're taken out of the game, and that makes us feel like we're what? Missing out. That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Same thing that we had since we were kids. It's a weird ass cycle.
Yeah. And I mean, you miss out on a lot of things. The thing about endometriosis is it causes chronic pain in the two places where women are always told you're supposed to feel pain: menstruation and sex. So you're already set up to not be listened to. And you're kind of already set up to believe that what you're feeling is normal from the get-go. Menstruation is supposed to be painful, and sex is supposed to hurt. So I think that really inhibits people's ability to even realize that they're feeling chronic pain in the first place. I don't think people know for a long time that what they're feeling is chronic pain. And they think that, am I just supposed to suffer? Is this what life is? Is this what it feels like?
You don't have the same cause and effect scenario that other people get. Like a broken leg, you get to see the immediate injury. You get to see, that they're going through something. In your case, you're basically got to prove that you're faster than the rest of the people in the pack. You've got to show somebody that you are out of the ordinary, but it's got to be to such a degree that you're hopping on one foot, waving your arms and screaming and yelling and doing everything in between. That's got to feel so lonely.
Yeah, and it's difficult too, because it sometimes, I like complaining like anyone else, but like it kind of gets tiresome explaining yourself over and over again and constantly trying to you start to feel a little bit like you're just bitching all the time, but it's almost like trying to force people to listen to you. And it's so hard to get doctors to take it seriously that it becomes that one step more difficult, that when they do listen and when they are saying, okay, you know, this isn't within the normal boundaries of what you're supposed to be feeling, then endometriosis can only be diagnosed through a surgery. They have to cut you open and go in, and they have to physically look, which adds a gigantic barrier to people getting it diagnosed. Because not only, I mean, first you have to have insurance. You have to be able to get it diagnosed. You have to have that as a resource. You know, I'm lucky that my parents have good insurance. I'm still on their insurance, and that my parents have that money to be able to do that. But if taking that time off for a surgery isn't something you can do, and having insurance that will cover it isn't something you can do, you kind of have to just say, okay, we can't prove the diagnosis. And if you can't prove the diagnosis, how do you get those experimental meds covered? How do you get the treatment you need? How do you get all of these resources that there barely is if you can't even prove that you have it, you know?
It kind of falls in that fibromyalgia type of bucket, where somebody just says, like, you have this non-existent or existent pain of everything in this particular area with no actual diagnosis that can be pinned on it. It's the bucket. It gets tossed in there for everything that's not understood. And then, unfortunately, that bucket is laced with a large group of people, especially over the last couple of decades, that are pain med seeking. So now you're sitting in a bucket of people that make you, you know, doctors are they are constantly on guard for someone that's coming in and looking for something above and beyond into the narcotic category to relieve pain. And if they think that your perceived pain is at such a low degree that every other woman is walking around and not complaining about it, then why would they ever hand you something that could actually reduce it? So you're putting so many different stereotypes and buckets and all these types of different things. I can't even begin to fathom what that's like.
And I think too, with the pain medications, you kind of have to go into like, no matter what age you are. If you're young, you're like, okay, this is going to be lifelong. If you're old, you're like, what is this going to do damage with my body that's already aging? And NSAIDs aren't good for you. And they were throwing, I was taking, 1,200 milligrams of ibuprofen a day for like a third of the month.
Hello, renal failure.
Right. And I already have, you know, other medical issues, and I have other things that, you know, are wrong with my GI tract. So anyone who has chronic pain, I truly don't think that there's proper pain management for people, because the pain management is something that's also ruining your body in another way. And, you know, I would get nauseous from the pain meds, and sure, it was helping with the pain sometimes, but it was also adding this other thing. And the earlier doctors I saw were quite happy to just throw the ibuprofen at me and say, you know.
They used to do that in the military. They called it Ranger candy. They would throw Motrin at you for everything.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is.
Big buckets of it. I used to get them all the time for every ailment. They're like, here's your complimentary 1,000, you know, capsule or tablet bottle of ibuprofen. Have a good day.
Yeah, they throw it at everything, and there isn't really any safe pain management that doesn't come with those consequences, which is tough.
I think that we don't give enough credence to other methods of pain management, that we have not given any real focus on Eastern medicine to the degree that it should be. Because at the end of the day, chronic pain sucks, but it is not a mood, right? Nobody wants to say that. It is not a demeanor. It is only pain. It can only be that thing. Everything after that is controllable. Controllable because it's a choice. These are the things that they don't teach us. You know, you're being told from day one that you are to suffer. So much so that they have it written in religious text that says, ha ha ha, you guys will endure this forever because of one woman. You know, that kind of thing. It's unbelievable what you guys have to endure, you know, just to get to this point. Hey, academics. Have you endured life's tragedies, trials, and tribulations? Did you adapt and overcome?
Do you have advice for others to pay forward and want to be a guest? Then email us a brief 2 to 3 minute video to show@thetragedyacademy.com and tell us how our academics can learn and grow from these experiences. Thanks again for your support. And now back to class.
You had a point earlier that I think we can't bypass, because this is extremely interwoven into the entire scenario. And that is the sex life that comes along with this type of situation.
Yeah, that's been a very large part.
Yeah. Do you want to give us an idea of that?
Yes, that is one of the biggest problems I was having. So besides, feeling pain all the time, something that should have been
beautiful.
I felt, something was taken away from me that I don't think it should have been. And it took me a long time to get, my doctors to listen to that. So it did ruin my sex life completely. And I never had anything normal to base it off of. So that's a big part of it. It was sex is such a personal experience in the first place. And there's still a lot of struggle. I mean, people are better at talking about it now, but there's still a lot of things about it that people are weird
100%.
about. But I didn't really have anything to base it off of personally. I didn't have it didn't hurt before and now it does. Like if you break, a leg, for instance, like we were talking about earlier, you don't have anything to compare it to. I remember doing a lot of research, is it supposed to be painful? How painful is it supposed to be? And a lot of people were like, yeah, sex hurts sometimes. So I was like, oh, okay, so that must be normal.
There's so much wrapped into that because there's so many different things. The male prowess or, the male ego is attached to, whether or not they're supposedly causing pain and things like that. There's so many weird things that you've got to traverse in order to even get the right information from.
Yeah.
That's so skewed.
Yeah, it makes it really tricky to find, a baseline of what it's supposed to be like. So I really had nothing to compare it to at all. So for a while, I didn't realize that it wasn't normal. And so I thought maybe I was like, oh, maybe I just don't like sex as much as everyone else. I was like, maybe, because I always kind of felt like, everyone plays it up a lot, which maybe people do. But the thing is I really don't know because I have no idea what other people experience it like.
And that's the thing. If it was a flavor of ice cream, you wouldn't be pissed if you never got to taste it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hate to say this. It's kind of that same recurring thing. Fear of what we're missing out on.
Yeah. And it's everyone looks like they're enjoying themselves so much. And I'm like, this is such a huge part of being my age. And I never really got to enjoy it. And then even though I know that it's not, and I've been with my now fiance since we were 17 and, we're 24 now.
That's awesome, by the way. That's awesome.
It is pretty awesome. I am proud of our relationship and he's never tried to make me feel bad about it. He's never been anything but extremely kind about it. He's always been open to working around it and whatever I need. And he's been, the most amazing anyone could be about it. But I still always felt kind of guilty, and it's hard not to. And I kept telling myself, you don't owe anybody sex, whatever. And he never made me feel like I owed him anything, but I still felt bad because not only could I not enjoy something, the thing that was causing me pain and taking something away from me, then I felt, it's also taking something away from the person that I love, which isn't fair. And even though he never complained about it, I couldn't ever stop feeling guilty about it. My problem was taking something away from both of us that I felt like we had the right to have. So that was really, really, really hard and really tricky. And something that I had to bring up in therapy when I started going to therapy, that I felt like I almost stopped worrying about myself. And I was like, why is my problem have to be so about other people, and I couldn't get my brain out of that.
So you had taken a role, almost a backseat to yourself, to feeling so much pain for him, so much pain for the loss of your ability to, enjoy what you were told everybody else is enjoying and put in a position where you're just basically alone with this.
Yeah, because I thought I was missing out. And so I knew I didn't want anyone else to feel like they were missing out as well. You know, I felt like I was taking something away from him, even though he never made me feel that way. But it's hard to not blame yourself for it, you know?
I think one thing that we have to remember is we're not responsible for anybody's happiness.
True.
Nobody's, whether they're your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whatever that title is, you're not responsible for somebody else's happiness, right? And then secondly, it's a choice to be with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You don't choose to eat garbage every single day. Nobody chooses to eat crap unless they're getting some kind of reward out of it, all right? So he's making the choice to be with you because he loves you. And then his payoff is not that. Because if it were that, then there'd be no reason to be together to begin with. So cut yourself a break. He's making the decision. He wants to be in this position. So allow him to be. Because I think that if the roles were reversed, you would automatically give him the same compassion, right? So allow him to be human and allow yourself to accept his kindness and his understanding and his empathy, right? We like to take on the feelings of other people so much. We give each other, we like to believe we know what other people think about us. We like to believe that we know other people's perceptions of, our moral compass or our pain scale or our, anything and everything. We like to believe that everybody knows it. They don't know shit about us. They don't, because how many people do you know that about?
Yeah, nobody.
Like maybe one or two, like a very tight-knit group.
Yeah.
You just don't know, because guess what? Everybody's worrying about what other people think. Pick out an outfit, go to work, and spend all the time that you do picking it out. And I say this all the time, but you go into the office, all right? You're going to invest a good hour into all this, depending on how OCD you are, getting all this situated. Walk in there. But guess what? Everybody else did the same thing. Now you go home, and I want you to tell me, unless it's fucking Herb that always wears the goddamn green shirt, you're not going to know what anybody else wore.
Nope. Yeah.
Do you think they know what you wore?
Probably not.
Probably not. Everybody played the game. Nobody knows your pain, right? Nobody is seeing your pain. This is a hard thing to realize, right? And I talk to friends, that have had chronic pain and things like that. And it's almost like you take a role or a personality or a persona. Your ego almost becomes intertwined with the fact that you are a literal sadness ball and chain to anybody else that is in your presence or tacked onto your life, right? That's a shitty way to refer to yourself, because you talked about not getting a baseline. Well, fuck, that's not even getting up to a line to even draw across. It doesn't even work that way.
Yeah.
Right? So if we're not responsible for anybody else's happiness, then we must be responsible for our own happiness, right? So when we're trying to derive our happiness from the societal structure that's been put before us and all these different pillars of life, must be prom this year, lose your virginity here, get married here, have kids here, do this here, and making someone a slave to unattainable tasks or not unattainable, to benchmarks that don't need to exist. They're just concepts. They're ways to keep people, from looking to their left and right.
It's little boxes. Pete Seeger, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, there's also Johari's window, I think, as well. What other people think of you, you think yourself, and then, what nobody knows about you or some shit like that. But it really means that, when you walk around with that chronic pain, you think that people can see your pain. And it just becomes like this entire world, this entire reality. But like I said earlier, that's not a mood. That's not a personality. That's not a persona. That's not any of those things. Pain is not those things. So how do we take care of those things? Because you can be in pain and be happy. Believe it or not. It is very attainable, right? But in order to do that, you got to find out what is triggering your pain and how you address it. Because guaranteed, endometriosis is probably like 1/8 of the entire issue that you have going on, because you know what that is. It's definable. It's done. It is up on the shelf. You figured it out. You know, you went through an early hysterectomy. We're going to talk about that in a moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's defined. It's all this other shit swirling around that doesn't have any real roots. It's not going to grow into anything unless it's given ground to grow from.
Yeah.
So when we give it that platform, then it becomes reality. But you don't have to give that kind of reality to it. You sit back and you start to look at, well, how can I heal myself?
That's why I wish I went to therapy earlier, and why I really wish that, therapy.
Everybody needs a therapist. I don't give a shit who you are.
And I really wish that people with chronic pain were told earlier that they should seek therapy for it, because I don't think it's people's first thought, because it wasn't my first thought to go to therapy. It wasn't until later that I realized that there was all these problems, because I had essentially given up on myself feeling better and tried to find, and I was almost like not trying to feel better for me anymore, because I had accepted that I wouldn't feel better. I kind of given up on the idea that like things could improve for me. Yeah. So I just wanted to find ways to what I could do to try to improve things for other people. If that makes sense.
I totally get it. And I say Robin Williams because he was such a treasured icon. And I don't think that it rippled through the world the way people think it did just because they loved him.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way it resonated to me was that it was a mask. Because we wear masks. We wear masks every day, interviews, everything, that we go through. And, customer service, family mask, whatever it is. Listen to your voice. That'll tell you the answer. Because you change your inflections for each and every one, right? So now that fear of missing out shows up again, because that's fool's gold, by the way. Fool's gold. there is no happiness at the end of that. That's not where it's derived from. But that mask is what gets you a ticket to the party. And we will do anything to keep that mask up to societal standards. We'll take drugs. We'll do heroin, methamphetamines, all these heinous things for what? Everybody thinks it's to go out and have a good time. It's not to go out and have a good time. A lot of the times it is those people are just trying to feel like they feel everyone else feels like.
Yeah, they're looking for normal, just in a different way.
When we know the root cause of those types of things are just the same as any other pain. Mm-hmm. It all starts somewhere in the childhood, and click, and it starts a trigger, it's a boulder that rolls forward, just whether or not it, has a clearly defined path or it's just bouncing all over the shit like the ones in my head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially with regard to your boyfriend. I wouldn't take on his pain too, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he wants you to.
No.
Because every time you feel bad for him, he feels bad for you.
Yeah.
It's a mirror. It really is an infinite mirror. If the two of you were standing in front of each other, feeling empathy or pain for one another, it would just continue replicating where you would feel bad for the other feeling bad.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again. Right?
Yeah.
So he's going to be there. He's already proved this. Mm-hmm. Right? He's already proven that point. And you're figuring out now in therapy that your happiness doesn't come from him. It doesn't come from a sex life. Mm-hmm. It doesn't come from anything but whether or not you love yourself. Mm-hmm. That's as simple as it is.
And it's like learning that relationships are different. And I think people are kind of given that idea through with popular media, kind of what a good relationship is or what that includes. And if it doesn't include one thing, then it can't be a happy relationship when it's not that simple or that black and white. I think I felt I can't have a happy relationship without a happy sex life, but you can. And it was just something I had to learn, and work in therapy and talk about, because I think people really think you have to have all of these things and you have to have all of them or there's a problem, when that's not really the case.
It's bullshit.
Yeah, agreed.
It really is. It is something that, unfortunately, our elders were told, and they were told for certain reasons, and may have been required to get to where we are now, and all that type of thing. Those societal constructs, they create the mental issues that we have on a day-to-day basis. If you think about it, ADHD, bipolar, whatever the hell else out there. Well, I'm sure their doctors will kick me in the junk for saying, that it's not something caused by, a particular chemical reaction or an imbalance of some sort. But honestly, to me, I think that it is screams of the human mind in various forms for being trapped in a cage that we've devised called reality, society, acceptance, conformance. And I'm not saying, let's go anarchy. No, because if we look at this, all the things that you described, pain was one of the smallest, most infinitesimal pieces of this entire discussion, right? We discussed chronic pain as it relates to all the things that surround this. So let's go back. And now we're looking at, you're done with a trial, you're throwing up, you're having chest pains, panic attacks, you're snapping at everybody on the planet. You're probably, because hormones are not unlike steroids. They will make you 1 minute eat a couch cushion because you're hungry, and the next minute you want to vomit, and you're all over the place and all those types of things. So you're at the end of your rope.
Yeah. And, I'm also having to go to work still,
So you go to your doctor, right? You go to your doctor. The excellent doctor that you found after going through all of these different OBs that didn't have the ability to comprehend or empathize with you. Maybe not their fault. They really just, whatever structure their mind or their cage is, didn't allow for you to be in the level of pain that you were. But this doctor found it. This doctor walked you through these things. But this doctor also had to do something that a lot of doctors say is unethical.
Yeah.
And that was the hysterectomy.
Yes. So, yeah. And we didn't make the decision lightly, and it was something that we had talked about for a long time. And before I started the Orlissa, we did have a discussion that she made sure she recorded that, if the Orlissa doesn't work, what are our options? And obviously that was one of them. And so the tricky part then became that there was a lot going on at the time that made this surgery really difficult. My brain has to put everything together.
Please take your time. If I haven't said it to up to now, again, thank you for your candor, your courage, and your openness with everybody out there, because every word that you speak is the truth of so many other women and people out there in some way, shape, or form. So you take all the time you need because you deserve this time. All right?
So, yes, the surgery was complicated for a lot of reasons. My doctor felt that the right choice was to remove all of my reproductive organs, essentially, to remove...
So ovaries as well?
Ovaries, uterus, cervix, all of that. The issue was that normally that is not something that you can get covered by insurance at my age. If you're kind of under 35 or 40, that can be really, really, really tricky. Usually the insurance will only cover it if you leave an ovary so that you still have eggs and you can still...
Reproductive capabilities.
And, hormones as well. You're still having hormones and everything. But the issue with that is that if you leave any part of the reproductive system, then the endometriosis isn't actually going to go away, and if I'm going to go through such an intense surgery, we might as well take everything and just end this, or end it. The recovery is years long, but as best as possible. It was also tricky because it was during COVID. So scheduling it was a nightmare because it was considered an elective surgery, even though in the meantime in that space, I think it took me 3 or 4 months to get it scheduled. I wasn't on any medication. I was back to just taking pain medications. I was trying to go to work, and the surgery was just being put off because the surgery center wouldn't schedule it. So in that meantime, I was back to the extreme pain that I was having from the very beginning with really no help. Yeah. Which was a nightmare. I had doctors tell me not to do it. I went to my neurologist for a different reason. And I had expressed concern to him because, so I have a pineal cyst, which is really, really common and pretty much doesn't bother people for the most part. People usually find out by accident, which is how I found out because I got a concussion and they just saw it in the CT scan. But I went to see a neurologist because there's a lot of information they don't know about it. And there's thoughts that hormones might have to do with it, which is why women get cysts more often. So I had inquired with my neurologist, hey, if I have this surgery and have my hormones go from 100 to 0, is that going to affect the cyst? Do I have to worry about the cyst growing? Will that make it shrink? Will that cause any sort of domino effect with my health? And instead of answering my question, he freaked out about me getting a hysterectomy, and he was not worried about the effects it would have on the cyst or anything. All he was concerned about was the fact that I was having a hysterectomy, and he told me that that's like my main purpose in life, and like I'm taking out what makes me a woman and all this stuff. And he went through this whole, and the thing was is that it was none of his business in the first place. I didn't go there to him for his input on my other medical problems. Yeah, he's a neurologist. He's not an OBGYN. What does he know? So I never really got an answer to my question. So about if that would affect the cyst, which I'll find out. It's been 6 months since my surgery, so I had to get an MRI. But anyway, yeah, so he freaked out.
You just watched somebody have a cerebral flatline based on their societal upbringings, and you got thrown up on by somebody with nothing but it's just word vomit of all the things that you're supposed to be and why you're fracturing their head right now. It's almost like you don't have a choice. It's not your body. It's not your, your decision.
And honestly, what hurts more than even just people thinking oh, well, then what use are you? It's almost like what they're saying is your comfort is less important, because if I needed to get any other organ taken out for a medical reason, people wouldn't be like, are you sure you want to take it out though? What will life be without it? If you have to take an organ out, you have to take an organ out. You know what I mean? People don't normally are you sure you want to do that? Why would I want to live with chronic pain? And thankfully I don't really want children, and I've always been more adoption orientated anyway.
You can always adopt. You can love any child as much as any other.
Absolutely.
Love isn't attached to DNA.
No, not at all. Exactly. So it's that it's not even a problem anyway, but the idea that all these people really were saying you should, as a woman, you should be willing to put up with all of this horrible pain and all of these things you've had to give up just to be able to birth your own kids, when that's not even my only option anyway.
We have a real problem as humans transferring things. And we don't just do that amongst society or, in political affiliations or, in our aspirations and things like that. What I'm trying to say is that everybody tends to take other people's viewpoints on how people should grow societally, or, their understandings of how we're supposed to navigate through our development, through our life, through our, sex life or anything of that nature. People examine, for incongruencies or ways to put themselves in a comfortable position within their own mind. Right. So they're looking at someone, and they're saying, well, look, if they're like that, then I don't feel that way. Or maybe I'm in a better place. And they don't like to think that either. They don't want to acknowledge your pain, because they're going to have to say, oh, well, guess what? My cramps aren't that bad. That's not anything I could ever imagine a woman wanting to say to another woman. Because for some reason, we've said that that's not allowed to be discussed. And that's it should just be empathy across the board. And I just feel like we transfer everything, our thoughts, we transfer, our beliefs, we transfer how we interact with each other all the time. We take on other people's moral judgments and standpoints and things like that without any consideration for the situation with which these decisions are being made. And quite frankly, fuck him.
Right.
He's a dude, never had a cramp in his life. I'm not going to fucking tell a woman something like that. It sounds insane. I can't imagine how you didn't slap him in it. Well, you're a very nice young woman, so you're not going to do this. But this guy had no business doing that.
No, not at all.
And that's a form of shaming.
Yeah. And thankfully, I'm pretty stubborn, and I just like asked her, I just like called my mom and I like told her what happened. I was like, I'm so mad, like fuck this guy, like, you know. So it didn't make me like not want to, like, you know, he didn't waver my like how you know, sure I was about this is like what I wanted, but he definitely tried. It really like opened a really interesting conversation that I had with my fiance about gender, you know, because this guy was like, you know, if you take out your uterus, you know, almost like you're not a woman. And people are always saying like that conversation's about genitals, but clearly it's not, first off. But also, you know, like it kind of, it's like that first step into like why, you know, the trans community is treated so badly, you know, because everyone's basing like who you are and what you're supposed to do and what you're supposed to be based off of an organ that I had gotten removed and nothing about me has changed, you know?
I don't know, man. You look like you're down one uterus, so I kind of don't want to talk to you anymore. I wasn't going to say anything, and I was like, did you see her when she came in? She looks like she doesn't have a uterus.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like people can't tell, you know, and it makes it, you know, it really made me think about like all those people that are like, well, you know, even if you get a sex change, you're still not a woman, you know, you can't reproduce. I can't, you know? So it's almost like these people, like, they don't care, like, what you are now. They care about how you started. And it's like, that's not who you are anymore. So why, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it really made me think about, like, what trans women specifically go through.
Jealousy. Remember we said earlier that, you know, one person will get jealous of what another person is allowed to do with themselves at this point or at this juncture in their life? If you don't think that there's a little bit of a sprinkle of, I feel like I'm somebody else, but I never got a chance to be somebody else. And now someone else is going through these situations and get to do them without being, you know, ostracized or put into a bucket or the same level of, so much so that they can't pursue who I want to be. All these people are just as confused as anybody else because, hey, guess what? We're all a little bit man and a little bit woman. That's how it works. It's a yin yang, but nobody wants to, you know, they think they're supposed to be, well, I have 270% man. So that means that I should wear the M shirt, you know, and I am 180. So I wear this shirt. That's a half and half, you know, or whatever. I don't know. Right. It's ridiculous. But the fact of the matter is the only reason why this has to exist is because it's oppressed from above. Otherwise, here's the thing. For a country that wants to be united, we sure are dividing the fuck out of ourselves into little bitty pieces.
Yeah.
Over and over and over and over and over again, just to get the acceptance of those above us, supposedly, right? Or the people that set the standard. Bullshit. Who cares, man? It's much easier to just be authentic than it is to be a label.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's the standard that we need to judge people by who you are, walking the walk, talking the talk, not yesterday, not tomorrow, because guess what? Those don't exist. They're not here. What you're doing now. Judge. Don't even judge. Just be yourself in the now and accept things for what they are. And that's also how you take care of the pain issue, right? Because if you're thinking about future pain or you're grieving past pain and what you've missed out, you get pain times 3. Ain't that a smart choice? Hey, look, you know what? I'm gonna be in some pain right now, and then hold on. This isn't good enough. I need to have stomach aches because of my depression from the pain I've already had. No, wait, I'm not done. Hang on. I need to have chest pains because they're not about the pain I'm having now because I already know that's happening. I'm going to have some chest pains because I know I'm going to have some pain later on, right? Let me just stack these all up right here and enjoy life. It's not a good method to fucking get happiness.
Yeah.
So you got to live in the now.
Yeah.
You got to take away the past and the future pain. You know, and as far as I don't have answers. I'm not a therapist or anything like that. I just, you know, try to think from the outside looking in. I don't think that you're missing out on anything. And I'm saying that not from a perspective of, hey, you're not going through the trials and tribulations or, you know, the mental anguish of this, that, and the other. I just want you to remember that it only exists because they told you it exists. All those things that you think you're missing out on only exist because somebody told you they exist. If they didn't ever tell you, you wouldn't feel the loss for the things that you are feeling the loss for, grieving for other people and things of that nature. I don't think that's how we're designed. That sounds more like a sickness than it does, that's a sickness in and of itself. And I think that you owe yourself that time to love who you are, love exactly who you are, and maybe give yourself a little bit of martyrdom, because you know what? You're out here having endured that. And instead of sitting in a corner and crying and hanging things up and just being done with it, you're coming on and you're empowering all these other women or transgender people or anyone that's dealing with a extremely difficult situation head on, right? Coming on and doing something like this empowers others. And you're not just doing it that way. You have a podcast now as well. You want to tell everybody the name of your podcast?
Oh, yeah. It's called The Never Ending Sleepover.
That sounds like the coolest Judy Blume book from you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's something that's like How to Eat Fried Worms, The Never Ending Sleepover, and then something like that.
So
I love it.
It's just, I just kind of made it for fun. I really like podcasts. And it's just something me and my fiance do together. And we just have conversations about stuff or teach each other about things we learned about that we thought were cool, tell stories about our childhood. It's just meant to be like funny and lighthearted and just kind of a way to connect with people. Yeah. And to just have that time. It's really nice, a lot of fun.
I know sex seems like it's put on some giant ass pedestal, and I'm probably going to take heat from all the men of the world because they don't want to admit it too. It's hyped. It's great. It is what it is. I'm not going to tell you that you're not missing out on something, but I can surely tell you that the older you get, the more you realize that it is a fleeting moment within your life that really shouldn't have the enduring impact that it does. It's not what they make it out to be. You know what sounded amazing throughout in this entire thing? The person that you described that you were giving the most grief to and the most pain and all that kind of stuff. You guys are sharing something that is intimate. Because what people don't understand is podcasting is not just sitting down and recording something and then calling it a day. Podcasting is planning. Podcasting is editing. Podcasting is listening to yourself say these things to your significant other and then understanding, well, hey, guess what? I reacted this way when he said that. He might not have noticed it, but I heard it in my own voice. Things like that. So I think you should be proud of something like that. That is a million times better than sex. Million times better than sex. 100%. Because you're going to remember that. You're going to remember that. You don't remember sex. You remember the relationship.
That's
you
true.
remember the love that's attached to it. You love the moments, but the moments can be created out of anything. It doesn't have to be derived from where they told you it has to be derived from. So enjoy those times with him and just keep making more of them. Right? The dude, he's fine. And if he's not, he's going to have to go see a therapist because the situation's not going to change. So that's his journey. He'll do it, but at least he's got somebody that understands, right? I'm impressed by you. I think you're an amazing woman. I think that you've endured a lot at a very young age, but I think that you have thrived, not survived, because you're sitting here now. You're enduring, what most women dread at the end of their life. You're facing that reality at this time of your life. Nobody wants to discuss the hormonal changes and the menopausal symptoms that come with a hysterectomy and how it's worse at a younger age and those types of things. Right.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah. Who wants to have hot flashes at 23?
It sucks. It sucks.
That doesn't sound like something that someone wants to sign up for. But guess what? Your name is not Rachel Hot Flashes. That's not, well, oh man, that would be, that would be kind of funny, actually. Would that be your wrestling name? That's your wrestling name.
I love that.
But it's, right? But here's the thing. You're not hot flashes. You're not whatever symptom that comes with that. Because, all of the ancillary things that surround your intimate relationships or whatever it is that comes with that. You're not those things. We are not a symptom. We are not any of those things that they read off at the end of a prescription, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are all symptoms. You're still you. You're still Rachel, and you're still plugging along. You don't have to take on those personas anymore. Keep going to therapy. I go to therapy once a week, maybe sometimes every other week, depending on the schedule. But yeah, I think everybody needs it.
Agreed.
But cut yourself slack. Allow yourself to be human and allow other people to pick up their own sack. Let them carry their shit for a while. Let them figure themselves out. And the best thing that we can do for others in these situations is lead by example. You can't convince somebody to see or know your experiences. You can't convince somebody to feel the same level of pain. But what you can do is accept what you have in life and make the best of it that you can, because, I mean, you can either give in and become that mask, the one that sits in the corner and grieves everything that's gone in the now, missing the current beauty that we have in life every single day. Is stop grieving the past and just enjoy now. Don't take on those personas. Don't let somebody else tell you who you are. Because last time I checked, man, when they say all these things, I don't let anybody tell me who I'm going to be.
Good.
Not anymore. Fuck that. Fuck that. You shouldn't either. So you're not sad. You shouldn't be depressed because of this or because you can't that or whatever the hell it is. Fuck you. Right? That's not even, how dare you, right? You need to go work out what's making you say that to somebody. That's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, feel bad for that dude because something's really fucked up in there to look at a young woman in the face and shame her for trying to get rid of her pain. The fuck is wrong with that? That dude's got some issues.
For real.
He needs help.
Agreed.
He could have been sued. Here's the reality. He could have been sued all the fucking back for something. And then now anybody that he thinks might be sued by an action that they're doing when he's not even there, he's trying to tell because he's protecting somebody else. We don't know what the motive behind anybody else's thoughts and their actions. You just can't even put them together. It could be a modicum of things. Shit, his wife might not have been able to have kids. And he's been super sad because he never had a kid. We don't know, but that's not yours to take on.
Mm-hmm. True.
So the one thing we should remember throughout all of this is that we have to accept ourselves for who we are and that we don't owe anybody anything. You owe nobody nothing. You owe yourself everything and the rest will come in turn.
Agreed.
I appreciate you. I really, really, really do. I can't tell you how grateful I am that you've come on and that you've had this discussion. My wife and I talked about this before you came on. She was very, very excited that somebody was going to be able to discuss something that is so near and dear to so many women's hearts. It's something that they've been enduring forever. And I can't obviously empathize with the situation to the same degree or at the same level or whatever it might be. But I can say that, I mean, if you see pain in somebody else's eyes, recognize it. It's not hard to see. You can feel it and just be cool. Just be fucking cool. Don't use you don't have as much pain as me fucking thermometer. Because I'm over that shit.
Yeah.
Everybody's over that shit.
I hate that.
Oh, well, you
someone
didn't
has
have
it worse.
mine.
And I'm like, but it still sucks,
How do you know?
Yeah.
You don't have my nerves.
True.
You don't have my guts. You have none of these things. You don't know. Maybe my brain says pain at 1 feels like 10. You have
True.
no clue. You can be designed so many different ways. I like that we argue about transgender and all that kind of stuff, but yet we can be born with multiple parts and shit. But we're just going to ignore that stack. We're going to put those people over there. That didn't happen. They're only born in 1s and 2s, and those are defective. That's it. We're not going to acknowledge the fact that nature's trying to happen, and doing whatever the fuck it wants.
Yeah.
It's not about the societal structure. Be you. Be proud. And you're welcome back anytime. I appreciate you. Keep sharing that relationship that you have with your fiance on your podcast. What's the name of the podcast again?
Never Ending Sleepover.
Never Ending Sleepover. And you know what? I think that defines probably your relationship with him.
Yeah,
you guys have been friends for so long.
That. Yeah, because it's been since we were teenagers.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
See, could you guys be any more adorable? What the hell?
Thanks. I do also want to plug my TikTok too, just because I video documented my journey before and after the surgery. So my TikTok is Rachel J. Macdonald. And then I just took videos from before the surgery. I took some videos right before I went in, some videos after. And then I also took some videos about some of the complications and stuff. And I'm going to update soon when I go on hormone therapy. So if anyone listening
courageous.
is going to go through anything like that, I did record it because I couldn't find any resources from anyone else who'd been through it at my age. So if anyone listening is going to go through it, I did record it on TikTok if you want to watch from before to after the surgery.
Definitely.
So hopefully that'll help somebody.
We'll have all that information in the show notes as well and make sure that everybody can get there. And it'll also be on the website, so they'll be able to get to it from there as well. And I think that having that chronological step through that journey, that's etched in stone. Anybody can open up, their phone and find the help that you weren't able to find or you had to put together. So be proud of yourself for that. That's amazing.
I'm hoping it'll help because I couldn't find anything. So hopefully somebody out there will have some use out of it.
It's funny, for an issue that affects 10% of women, there sure isn't much of a fucking focus on it.
I know.
Isn't that sad?
Yeah.
That's super sad.
And a lot of women weren't lucky enough to even get the surgery. I mean, I had a doctor that vouched for me every step of the way, and even we had trouble.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure you had the board, all the panel.
We had to schedule the surgery for the first surgery of the day because my doctor was worried that I would be questioned constantly by everyone who came to my hospital bed. So she even scheduled the surgery around me not having to interact with as much people. You didn't have to be
shamed for hours while you were waiting.
Yeah, so that essentially there wouldn't be very many people at the hospital at the time.
Transference. So. Remember, parents put a lot of stock. A parent can put a lot of stock in the success of their lineage, their line, or their children. And if they're told, that their self-worth is based on the size of their family and their ability to have more children, and that's their social currency, or their familial currency or something like that, they're going to do anything and everything they can to prevent you from stepping off the cliff, in their brain. Mm-hmm. Because if they had done that, maybe the dice were different. So they're just trying to protect you at the end of the day, but I think you did what was right for you. Don't let anybody question you. All right. And go to their TikTok, Rachel's TikTok. I'm going right after this. All right. Remember, everybody, be cool and keep learning.
Hey, academics. Thanks again for attending another class at the Tragedy Academy. You can show us some love by subscribing, downloading, and rating us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. Or ask Amazon Alexa to play the Tragedy Academy podcast. You can find links to all major podcast platforms and past episodes at thetragedyacademy.com. You can find us on all the majors of social media, on Instagram at The Tragedy Academy 2019, on TikTok at The Tragedy Academy, and on Twitter at Tragedy_Academy, where we'll post our clips of upcoming shows, updated info, and thoughts. If you'd like to be a guest, send an email to show@thetragedyacademy.com. Keep an eye out on Instagram for Tragedy Academy giveaways. Thanks again for coming to class, and remember, be cool, keep learning.
What's up, academics? This is Jay. I'm here to talk to you about Into the AM. This is a clothing and apparel company that I came across last year that has the absolute coolest designs. And the reason why I was attracted to it is because I grew up without a lot of money, like many others, and had to shop on that outlet rack with the irregular items. Things like the fly was over 4 inches to the left, or the right sleeve would be twice the size of the left. It looked like I was growing horizontally. Like, it's okay, honey. You'll grow into your left arm. So you really don't get a chance to express yourself the way that you want to. You go into life, you start putting on suits, you start putting on uniforms, and you realize you'd never had a chance to truly express yourself. Enter Into the AM, a team of artists and creators who share a common vision. They see clothing as a canvas to express what drives you. Since 2012, they've developed premium apparel that elevates self-expression and provides unparalleled comfort for wherever your passions take you. Into the AM's passion for change is the driving force behind their brand. They remain committed to creating products that inspire and promote self-expression by partnering with like-minded organizations focused on giving back to communities in need.
Last year, they donated 1% of all revenue from their graphic tees collection to the Art of Elysium charity. The Art of Elysium is an artist organization built on the idea that through service, art becomes a catalyst for social change. For over 24 years, the Art of Elysium has paired volunteer artists with communities to support individuals in the midst of difficult emotional life changes. They currently offer 110 community programs per month, serving over 30,000 individuals per year. The only permanent thing in life is change. Supporting charities dedicated to helping those going through these changes, trials, and tribulations require a never-ending commitment. The onus is on us as creators to affect change through our true, authentic talents, and Into the AM is the model of how this is done. Their clothes are handcrafted with care. They have a team of skilled artisans that craft each garment with the highest quality fabrics and eco-friendly inks. Not to mention, these things don't shrink, they don't fade, and they fit as if they were designed supernaturally. I'm stopped every time I wear one of the graphic tees to find out where I got it. The colors attract attention from miles, and the art is nothing short of spectacular, with designs for everyone. One of my personal favorites, Twilight Maiden. Go take a look. Into the AM does all of this while putting their money where their mouth is. 30-day money-back guarantee, lightning fast shipping, and hassle-free returns. The deals are endless. Graphic tee bundles, discount promo codes. Get over there, check it out. I'm highlighting the tees, but I'd be remiss to not mention that if you want to walk around in the absolute most comfortable shorts, joggers, and basic tees, hit up Into the AM. I even wear the basics to the gym. Head on over to thetragedyacademy.com, go to our sponsors tab, and follow the affiliate link to the Into the AM store. Help support Into the AM and the Tragedy Academy by purchasing the absolute best apparel and the best designs ever. And remember, academics, be cool and keep learning.